Hello everybody, I am back with another special video. I've been thinking what kind of thing you guys might be interested in next, and I was able to come across one comment that I think I can talk about for a lot longer than maybe some other comments that you guys can have. To jump right in, this comment comes from a John J, and this is actually one of the first comments I believe that is directly addressed to me. Could you answer or do a video on the following? Are there ever times where my chances would be better if I refused the breath test at the station versus blowing and fighting the over-the-limit BAC? So, and I will actually even add a little to that towards the end, as you will see. Is it better to refuse, essentially is what John is asking, versus blowing and then fighting the breathalyzer result? And the answer is simple. Choose to refuse is my mantra. Now, there's a lot of contention with that statement across the country, not between lawyers. Lawyers will universally agree if they're worth their salt. However, people understand that if they choose to refuse rather than blow, they automatically lose their license. And that is 100% correct. The question is not so much, should I refuse? The question is more along the lines of, am I willing to sacrifice my driving privileges in order to have the possibility of better resolving my case in court? That's the more accurate question. Because here's the thing. If you have had a couple and you believe you may be at that threshold where you're driving okay, but maybe you shouldn't be driving, you don't know. It's an unknown for you. Rather than risking and blowing into the device, because once you blow and you blow over the limit, negating the chemical evidence is not easy, even for professionals like myself. Sometimes there will be legal issues. Maybe the officer made a mistake in reading the implied consent. Maybe they accidentally started giving legal advice or borderline legal advice to a client. I've had that scenario. Maybe the camera that is recording the whole scenario is malfunctioning, so video that was supposed to be there is no longer there. There could be some other, maybe the client burped and the officer forgot to ask if there was any regurgitation, which they must ask by statute, any regurgitation or puking or anything of that sort prior to administering the breath test. So in all of those scenarios, I will be able to throw the breath test out. But barring that, I'm going to have to attack the machine itself. And I'm sure a lot of you engineers and scientists out there will agree, it's very difficult to argue with a machine. I can't cross-examine a machine because it cannot speak back. Now, I can cross-examine an officer and try and portray him as somebody who did an incomplete investigation, that this is universal. Pretty much in 100% of my cases, just about, at least the ones that I take to trial, I will have an officer that did half a job, a quarter of a job, 10% of a job, 2% sometimes. It's frightening, it's scary, but it's true. So it all exists out there. Poor police work. There are also good police work, but oftentimes, more often than not, let's just put it that way, they don't do a complete investigation. Why? Because the majority of lawyers plea. So they have no need for that. Now, when you refuse, in Kentucky, on a first offense, you lose your license for 120 days. It's 18 months on a second offense, 30 months on a third, and 60 months on a fourth or subsequent. You will, essentially, what you're doing is you're giving up your license, handing it over to the court, in exchange for a possibility of better resolving the case at trial. Now, don't be misled once more. If, for instance, we have a video recording of the entire scenario, and the officer, once they ask you out of the vehicle, you trip and fall, and then you stagger and you slur your speech, and it's clearly evident and obvious that you are under the influence and you are unable to hold your own, nothing in the universe can save you in that scenario. In the strictest sense, I mean, those cases can potentially still be won on maybe a purely legal issue, because there are two ways to win a DUI case: on the facts or on the law. And even sometimes when you win on the law, you may still lose the case because the prosecutor, without the number, simply with a video of my client staggering, falling, maybe throwing up, etc., on camera, is going to be enough for a conviction. So again, if there is no number, if there is a refusal, yes, you lose your license in in exactly every single state in the union. All 50 states have an implied consent at this point. Most countries, sometimes, I know some countries, you don't even need to refuse. If you blow, they'll still take your license away at the outset. It is judge, jury, and executioner as soon as the officer suspects alcohol. But those are other countries. We're not too concerned with them. We're here in the United States. In essence, you are giving up your privilege to operate a motor vehicle legally in exchange for a better, possibly, defense in court. I try refusal cases more often than I try cases where there is a number. A lot more often. I mean, the numbers are skewed. Cases that I try where there's no number, either the number has been suppressed or there was a refusal, versus cases where there is a number. And that's normal and logical. Now, let me address, this is something that John Jay has not particularly touched upon, but I want to address what one might call the ideal scenario. What is the ideal scenario? Let's say you're weaving and you can't maintain your lane. You've had a couple glasses of wine with dinner. You're not sure if you're okay to drive, but you're not sure if you're gonna pass that bloody breath test. And a lot of them are broken and they don't work properly. That is a true fact. They will never admit to it, of course. But when one machine stops working, what I have found in a lot of jurisdictions, they will simply shuffle these devices around. They'll take them from this county, they bring it over to this county as soon as it starts malfunctioning. And then this one malfunctions, and they take it out of this county and they bring it into this county after they tinker with it a little bit. All you have to do is follow the serial number. They cannot fake that. The only problem is sometimes if I've never been to that county, I don't know which county the device went to. I know where it came from because I have a case in that county with that serial number and I can backtrack it. But then once that device leaves the county, I have no idea where it's going unless I get a case from that county as well. So that's how they are able to get away with it, and they've been doing it for so many years. These devices are not accurate. So you had a couple, glasses of wine with dinner, and you're not sure, you might be over, you don't trust the device, you don't want to blow, but you want to create, obviously you're not going to be staggering, you're fine, you're just afraid of what might happen to you, and as soon as you open your mouth, you know the cop's going to smell it. The smell is there, you can never mistake it. It's not strong, it may be mild, but he's going to write presence of alcohol if you open your mouth. So now, what do you do? And this, I recommend this, I recommended it in another video. If you have gum, by all means, slap it in there, but let's say this is a scenario where you don't have gum. So what do? Roll your window down, officer comes up, do you know why I pulled you over? You are under no obligation to answer the officer, ever, to any of their questions. There is no law that says when an officer inquires as to your destination or your current location or your the place you're coming from, there's no law that says that you must answer, or why he pulled you over, etc., etc., etc. So the first, as the interaction will begin, do you know why I pulled you over? Is the most common question officers will ask. Why? Because no matter what you say, there's a 90% chance you will just have convicted yourself by admitting guilt. I was going 37, officer, Well, speed limit's 30, so you just admitted to breaking the law. You were going 50, but you don't want to tell him you were going 50, so you want to just kind of split the difference. I was going 37. You just admitted to breaking the law. Speed limit's 30. Or if you were weaving, and that's the only reason, then he'll ask, do you know why I pulled you over? You may not. You say, I don't know. Well, the proper response is to not open your mouth at all. You can shake your head. You can just stare at the cop. There is no obligation for you to respond. After the officer will realize you're not responding, he may ask it again. Do you know why I pulled you over? You can continue in the same fashion. At that point, there's almost 100% likelihood that he'll say, please step out of the car, sir or ma'am. And that is why he's going to do that. Because he is now starting to get confused. What is happening here? Why is this person not cooperating? Because it never happens. People have never seen it. Officers rarely see somebody who's just completely, but very calmly. Usually when people don't cooperate, they're very adamant about it. I don't have to do any of your stupid little tests and the thing and the... People very rarely are respectfully non-cooperative. So you're already getting brownie points, believe it or not. Then, the next step, as you exit the vehicle, close the door, walk over to where the officer is telling you to stand. He may ask you some questions. Continue in the same fashion. Simply look at him. You may, if you're a distance away, you may say something like, I'd rather not, sir or ma'am. Be respectful. There's absolutely no reason to be cocky or disrespectful in this position simply because you're disobeying a command by a peace officer of the law. You have no obligation to do any of their stuff. So I will ask you to perform field sobriety tests, and again, you can simply just stand there and say, maybe shake your head, I'm not doing it, kind of thing. And chances are, because you're on the street and you don't have rights on the street, essentially, as I've, again, constantly alluded to, your rights are only really truly kicked in when you're in the courtroom, when I come in and I advocate for you to a judge who makes the determination. On the street, you have no rights at all. The cop is the master of the street. He decides what goes or what doesn't go. You have no say in the matter. So, might as well take that pretty little Constitution and throw it out the window or set it on fire. That's about as good as it gets for you on the street. And so, the officer will likely put you under arrest. Now, let's examine what evidence has he gathered so far. He's got weaving. Maybe it's recorded, but his testimony is going to say it's recorded, or he's going to testify. He saw weaving. What else? Nothing. You refuse to answer any of his questions. You refuse to open your mouth so he could smell an odor. He cannot state slurred speech. He cannot state odor. He may still say your eyes were bloodshot and you had a flushed face. Even if they don't see it, sometimes they'll write it. So, physical characteristics. Okay. Does that rise to a level of operating a motor vehicle under the influence? I vote with almost 100% certainty that it does not. Does it rise to the level of operating a motor vehicle under the influence beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury? And once again, I submit with 100% certainty, or thereabouts, it does not. So let's move on. You're in the cruiser. He may be trying to make small talk. So where are you from? Are you from around here? You don't talk much, do you? He's trying to open you up. At this point, he's getting concerned, like, maybe this guy's a psychopath. Maybe he's a sociopath. Maybe he's crazy. Maybe he's sick. Now he's afraid for his own safety. You have barely said a couple words to him. You can't blame him for that. I would be in the same position if I were in his shoes. Again, it's not your job. It's not your position. You can maintain your silence and sit in the back of his cruiser in your handcuffs waiting to arrive at the jail. Don't play their game. Don't fall into the trap. Once you arrive at the jail, you'll be read a bunch of stuff, Mirandized once again. What are you going to do? say absolutely nothing. And after you are requested to submit to a breath test, you simply decline, and that's that. So since the arrest post-stop up to where you are going to, through booking, to get booked up to spend your mandatory 8 hours in the drunk tank, what has the officer gathered since then? Nothing. Zero evidence. He has weaving, flushed face, bloodshot eyes, and he will probably write refused field sobriety test, refused breath test, would not cooperate, failed to respond to all questions asked. Is that operating a motor vehicle under the influence of intoxicants? No way, shape, or form. This, what I just described to you, would be the ideal case. I have never gotten one of these before. I look forward to seeing it. My professor, by the way, in law school, may he rest in peace, Professor Render, he said, law enforcement in this country would come to a halt if people stopped talking to police officers. Because out of 1 million cases, you may never get not even one of the scenario I just described in the real world. But now imagine if every single scenario was that the interaction was exactly like this. Every time, why do people get convicted? They talk. I just was reviewing a case this morning where the officer turned on a recording and he was just asking questions after Mirandizing, of course. My client, he was just asking questions, and he talked, and he incriminated himself a lot. It's not a case that I can take to trial. He will get crucified. I'm going to get a plea offer for him, and it's going to be a very good plea offer. He's going to be very happy with it, but he's not going to be able, we're not going to be able to win. If I take it to a jury, they're going to lock him up. 100% certainty. So, again, the less you say, the better it is. There's a video floating out there called Shut the Fuck Up Friday. It's about 1 minute long. It's brilliant. I suggest you look it up. I'm gonna post a link right here, and there's probably gonna be a link in the description if I don't forget. It's brilliant. These two guys are brilliant. Shut the Fuck Up Friday is what it's called. Never talk to the police. It is ill-advised. And then there's another video. I'll be posting that right here. It's a lot longer. It's a law professor and a cop giving a lecture about 45 minutes about why you should never talk to the police. Also, absolutely brilliant piece of information if you got the time to look it over. I want to thank you all for watching this video. Once again, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, what have you. If you liked something, if you got more questions for me, if you didn't like something, whatever it may be, all comments are welcome. I want to thank John J. for the wonderful, wonderful question, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye, everybody.